course. Thank you very much, Rachel. My name is Julie Fallon, as Rachel said, and I am the chair of the Patients Association. I'd like to also welcome you this afternoon to our annual general meeting, which looks back over our last year. At some point, the agenda will come up, but I'll just tell you what we're going to be doing because it's a formal meeting and we have formal business to go through. Just in advance of that, the chat will be open, and so please feel free to introduce yourselves to each other in the chat box. If you want to put some questions in there, then please do. People will be monitoring those in the background while I'm doing my presentation and whilst Mark is talking to you about the financial position and about our finances generally. As I said, we'll try and answer questions as we go in the background, and then there's time at the end for questions and answers. And colleagues who are monitoring in the background will let me know if there's questions that it would be helpful to answer for all of you. So again, welcome, and I'll just run through what the agenda is looking like for this afternoon in advance of it hopefully coming up on the screen. So we're going to agree the minutes of last year's annual general meeting. We've got some trustee elections to approve. They've been, we've sent the poll out to our membership to ask for votes on our new trustees. And we've got the results of those, so we'll look at that. My chair's report, the finance report, which I will hand over to Mark for, just approval of our appointment for our auditor for going forward, and then we'll have a look at our 2025 priorities, and then do some closing remarks and look at some of the upcoming events, which are really interesting and exciting, and I hope you'll be able to join us for some of those. Just to let you know that the closed captions is now open as well. So for those of you who use that facility, that is available, and you can click on that if that's helpful to you in being able to access the meeting a bit more effectively. In terms of the minutes of the previous AGM, they were on our website and have been circulated, and we asked for votes to approve those. And as you can see, well, you can't actually, but I can. We had 67 votes to approve the minutes, so we will approve those. And thank you for those of you who took the time to approve them. It seems like Holly's still having difficulty in the background with the slide, so I'll plough on and hopefully it will catch us up at some point. We also, as I mentioned, asked for votes for our new trustees. We have 3 in the last period since the AGM last year. And the first one was for the election of Mark Blaney as our honorary treasurer, and you will meet Mark shortly when he goes through our financial report. And there were 71 votes for Mark, which was significantly more than those against. So he is resolved to his position as honorary treasurer and trustee of the Patients Association. And equally, our other 2 new trustees, Tina Chowdhury and Julia Ross, are both approved and so are also substantiated as trustees for the organisation, which is great news. All 3 of them bring some really significant and helpful skills to our board of trustees, and we're very pleased and welcome them keenly to our organisation. So thank you again for those of you who voted for our new trustees. So in terms of the chair's report then, I think it's been a tricky year for the NHS, and it's a tricky year that's followed a series of tricky years and found some really challenging times for patients who we're representing. The healthcare system in the UK, particularly in England, is looking in a really tricky state, as I've said, and could be described as being in crisis. We're waiting for the 10-year plan to come forward, which we're expecting in the next couple of years, and we hope there'll be some additional answers as to how we're going to take this forward. But the Lord Darcy review said the NHS was in a critical position, so I think this is pretty well accepted by the authorities in healthcare within the country now that things are desperately in need of change, and there was never a more important time really for ourselves to stand up as advocates for the patients and the services that they are trying to access. In a poll, 2024 survey that we did, only 13% of patients reported that they had no access difficulties. So that's, more than 80% did, which is pretty poor, really, by any measure. That's poor. And when we look at how patients are accessing our NHS services through a variety of different means, that would suggest that all means are proving difficult, and that's poor. Less than a third struggle to access GPs, which means that more than two-thirds did. And so that equally, that's 1/3 struggle to get to access to their GPs. But of course, that generates pressure elsewhere where people are looking for support. Only 2 in 5 feel their care is well coordinated, and of course that's a real problem for people who have multiple conditions that they need proper coordination and care for, and across families and what have you. And so poor coordination is a real issue for people. It also leads to kind of duplication and omissions, which isn't good either. So your experience matters more than ever, which is why we're so committed to the work that we do as an organisation to try and make sure that we get the best services that we can for patients, and certainly that we challenge the kind of the ongoing orthodoxy of how things are. On that note, I'm just going to do a quick poll, if I may, for those of you that have joined us. I'm hoping that the poll question will come up so you're able to vote, but we'd quite like your opinion about what you see as the biggest challenge facing the NHS right now. And if you click on one of those little boxes, one of those little circles, it should automatically register. We had a number of different areas we could choose from, but we've narrowed it down to those 4. So if you could tell us what you think is the biggest challenge for the NHS right now, whether it's long waiting times for treatment, whether it's difficulty getting a GP appointment, whether it's staff shortages affecting the quality of the care, or whether it's communication. If you can just let us know, and then we can have a look. And then this poll is going to go up on our website afterwards so that we can get a broader range of responses from people as well, which I think is, it is literally a very, just a touch point. But I think as we've got some members here with us today, it would be helpful just to see what you think. So please make your vote, and I'll just give you another 30 seconds or so to do that. Okay, we've got another couple of those questions coming up, so hopefully it worked for you. As you can see, fairly evenly spread, interestingly enough. We've got a third of you saying long waiting times, a third of you saying GP appointments, slightly less than a third saying staff shortages, and the difference made up with communication. So I think possibly we've assessed what some of the key issues are. It'll be interesting to see whether we get a different picture if we go for a broader range of people outside of this meeting. But thank you. Any information that we get from you from these polls is really helpful for us, because it helps to inform both the kind of the debate and the narrative going forward that we're able to have with people in positions of authority and power in the NHS, but also to identify where we focus our attention in the work that we do. Just a little bit then about your growing voice and how we reach out as far as we can to make sure that we get as broader kind of church of opinion as we can. We have now got almost 4,500 members, which is phenomenal, really, and has gone up by 23% since last year, which is, as I say, phenomenal, and I think probably reflects the difficulties that the general public are having in accessing services in the NHS, because more and more people are turning to us for information and support. So that was we've had a targeted increase of 7% in our members. We've had over 4,000 helpline calls and emails, which is up by 28%. So again, would suggest again that people are looking for support from us. 94% of those helpline users then had an improved understanding of the next steps they needed to take for whatever it was they called us about, which is really encouraging. So again, for people who are contacting us, we are able to answer their questions and point them in the right direction. We're always striving to improve that, obviously, and depending on what the questions are that come in, we can make sure that we've got the tools and the information to support people. And 98% of the helpline callers felt that they'd received personalised support. So again, that's really good and really helpful that we're getting such positive feedback, which kind of reinforces the usefulness and utility of the service that we're providing. Over 2,000 people were involved in projects and surveys, including our diagnostic report, which was used by NHS England in pursuit of its new diagnostics strategy, which again is good news because it means that it's been well served by your opinion and your thoughts. So it's, as I say, it's increasingly important that we get people involved in some of these discussions and debates to make sure that it reflects what patients need. And we've had 121 visits to our website, which again is great. You know, we're constantly looking at how we can improve our website and make it accessible to everybody. And so it's helpful and good to know that people are using it in the way that we want them to. So thank you to all of you and to everybody else who might be looking at this afterwards, because this AGM recording will be live on our website. Is live on our website now, but it'll be live. It will be available for anybody to see afterwards. Further to that, the way that we've used the information that we've received from you, we contributed to the Darzi review in terms of the NHS assessment that Lord Darzi undertook. We worked on a data pact, which led to the national conversation on data sharing. So again, really helpful to have information for that. We were involved in 12 national consultations, which we responded to, including working directly with the Royal College of Physicians and NHS England on a new vision for outpatient care. Clearly, this is a big issue, and it's kind of your gateway into secondary care after seeing GP, and it's really important that we get that right, given the length of the delays and the waiting times that people are experiencing now. There's been 38 external events amplifying patient voices, and we've had some key roles with the NHS Assembly and the Patient Safety Commissioner, as well as being involved in the Martha's Rule implementation. So that's really good. We were involved in the Module 6 of the COVID-19 inquiry. For those of you who know, the COVID inquiry is set over a number of different modules, looking at different aspects of the pandemic and how it was handled and what the outcomes of that were. And we've been involved in one of those, which has been really good. We've delivered 13 webinars for patients and professionals, which have been really well attended, and we're running some more next week, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment, or the week after rather. Tell you about that in a moment, but increasingly it's a good way of involving you in developing what we need to do. Why this matters is because we're the only charity that works across all conditions. So we represent patients, whatever, regardless of whether they've got a long-term condition, whether they've got multiple long-term conditions. We are not disease specific at all, and so we can look at the generic access, quality, waiting times, and all of those things, because, as I say, we are much more generic. We can take that whole system perspective, and we get direct patient insights that we can use in pursuit of that by looking at the information we get from the helpline and the projects. In terms of reaching more people, we have quite a high media impact. So 130 media requests were fulfilled. We get a lot of those, some of which translate into actual media requests. That's something that we do something with. Some of them don't. Personally, I've learned quite a lot about how the media works, but we have fulfilled those where we've been asked to. We were involved in the Channel 4 Dispatches programme called NHS in Crisis, and I don't know if any of you managed to see that, but Alf Collins, one of our trustees, was part of that. It's quite a shocking programme describing what systems were like around urgent care towards the end of last year, and as I say, it was pretty shocking, and it made front headline news. We've been on the Radio 4 programme a number of times. We've had national coverage in a number of the big high-profile newspapers, and also many local radio and television appearances too. So we have a high-profile role, and so that's why it's even more important that we make sure that we stay kind of relevant and current with the information about what's going on for people individually, so that we can represent that view when we're talking to people. I'm going to hand over to Mark now to talk about our financial report and our accounts, please. So I'll hand over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Julie. So, hello. Thank you for appointing me as your Honorary Treasurer. Therefore, this is obviously my first attendance and presentation here at the AGM. In my new role, I'm going to provide you with a summary review of the financials within the Trustees' annual report and accounts for 2024 to support the preceding report from our chair on the great work we are doing on behalf of patients. Due to the value of the Patients Association's income levels, the annual report and accounts are subject to an independent examination and not an audit. And this is still done by a suitably qualified person. They have completed their examination of the 2024 accounts, confirming that there were no matters that needed to come to the attention of the trustees or you as members that gave them cause for concern in any way about the underlying accounting records, that the accounting records have been kept appropriately, that they matched the accounts, and that the accounts were in line with the SOR. Independent examination gives a negative rather than a positive assurance as external audit would, but that is the nature of the beast. In terms of the accounts show that the association made a surplus in 2024, though less than it did in 2023. Income has increased. The increase mainly reflects the receipt of a large legacy. However, for donations and performance-related grants, our main income streams, these recorded lower income than in 2023. In terms of costs, we have increased our costs in fundraising to deliver our new income generation strategy. For other costs, apart from the helpline where costs have increased, these are areas, policy influencing, governance and support have been controlled to ensure the association remains a well-managed charity. The association's balance sheet has increased by the surplus generated in 2024 and is recorded in the current assets under cash at bank and at hand. Looking forward to next year, or due to the timing of this AGM, the current financial year, we are going to revitalise our strategy. Whilst doing this review, we will be continuing to look at our financial business model to ensure that we are resourced to be able to deliver against our objectives. I will, of course, be happy to answer any questions as best I can when in the question and answer session at the end of this AGM. So I'll speak to you later. Thank you. And now back to Julie. Oh no, sorry. I've got to do the auditors thing, haven't I? Sorry. So there was a vote in terms of reappointing the auditor. And as you can see from the vote on screen, 74 for and 1 against the reappointment of McIntyre Hudson as our independent examiners, really, for the next year. So thank you very much for those who voted in that. So back to Julie.
Thank you, Mark. Just wait for the camera to come back to me. Hopefully you can hear me. So I'm going to look forward to the 2025 priorities, which will be, which have been informed by information we've received from you and obviously the current environment that we're working within. So in terms of our priorities for this year and into early next year, building on our success, so expanding our reach, particularly in devolved nations and minority communities. Our membership is predominantly of a particular demography, and it's predominantly in England. So we're looking to extend our reach or expand our reach into other areas. So that's the focus for this year. We're looking to strengthen the measurement of our impact, so better evidence that change has resulted, because we're very good as a lobbying organisation, and we are involved in lots of discussions and influence the outcome of those, but we want to be able to measure the impact of that a bit more carefully. We've got 20 webinars planned, including the Patient Partnership Week, which starts on the 30th of June. The information about that is available on our website. And again, I'll talk about that again in a short while. And we are currently in the process of developing our next 5-year strategy. The one that we had is coming to an end this year, and we've engaged some external support to help us develop that, again, to make sure that we remain current and addressing the areas that are really important to everybody. Can I just ask another poll question then, if that's okay? It will come up so that you can see it. Which area should the Patients Association focus on most in 25, just to see whether we've got it right? A, advocating for shorter waiting lists. B, improving patient safety and the complaints processes. Supporting patients navigating complex care pathways. Pushing for better digital health services, or championing, that's a difficult word to say, championing health inequalities. So can I ask you to vote on those 5 areas now, please? And we'll wait and see the results come up in due course. Can colleagues in the background just check everybody can hear me, because the camera, I think, is still showing Mark, which is fine for Mark. But I just need to make sure that everybody out there can hear what I'm saying.
We can hear you, Julie, and I can see you, so you're fine.
Excellent, thank you very much. Just give it a few more seconds for the results of question 2 to come up. I assume they'll be shown to us again. Here we go. Put my glasses on so I can see what it says. So 31% is the highest score there for supporting patients navigating complex care pathways, and that relates back to where people are having difficulties, of course, with navigating their way through systems. So it's good that that's all lining up together, and then advocating for shortening waiting lists and championing health inequalities, fairly even split between those two, and then improving patient safety and complaints processes, and then much smaller number for digital health services. So again, thank you very much for that, and we will include that on our website, and hopefully get a more extended version of the output for that. Just want to talk a little bit then about upcoming events, and we've got some really exciting sessions coming up. So we've got one on this Friday at 9:30, where Rachel will be in conversation with Julian Hartley from the CQC, talking about rebuilding trust and transparency. And it would be great if you could join us to listen to that conversation. Clearly, the CQC has a very important role to play in the provision of health services and keeping services safe and of a high quality. And it'd be really good to listen to Julian's perspective on the challenges ahead, and how the CQC can engage in that fight for improved services. So join that if you can. I think that'll be a really interesting session. We've already got quite a lot of people booked in for it, but the booking remains open, and we'd love it if you could join us for that. So that's this Friday, the 20th of June, between 9:30 and 10:30. And then from Monday the 30th, we've got our Patient Partnership Week. We've been running that for a couple of years now, and it's become more and more popular, which is great. We regularly have high numbers of people attending those. We've got a series across the week. So on the 30th, we've got transforming outpatient care through shared decision making, which is going to be a really interesting conversation with a patient. So would love it if you could join us for that. That will be she's an inspirational person, and I'm sure you'll really enjoy listening to that conversation. We've then got Breaking Down Barriers to Equitable Care on the 1st of July, Making Digital Innovation Work for Everybody, again on the 1st of July at 12. We've got a bit of a scoop on the 2nd of July in conversation with Jim Mackey. So he's the incoming Chief Executive of NHS England, overseeing this interim period while the changes are taking place. So Jim will be talking to Rachel on the 2nd of July, I apologise, at 2 p.m. And again, that's already heavily subscribed. So do join for that, because I'm sure that will be quite illuminating. And then finally, on the 4th of July, on the Friday, we've got Championing Patient Voices in Healthcare Campaigns. And again, this is something that's obviously really close to our heart and something that we feel really passionate about. And so I'm sure that will be a really interesting session. And if you are able to join us, then hopefully we'll be able to get some more thoughts and views from you about how we can do that as effectively as possible. The link is at the bottom there, and again, is available through our website. So do please join us if you can. I'm going to ask a final poll question now, just to get a bit of a litmus test of how things are. How has your experience of the NHS services changed over the past year, in a range from significantly improved to significantly worsened? So could you please vote on what your experience has been of the NHS services over the past year? And I'll just give you a few minutes and wait for the result to come up before we move on. Oh, here we go. I'm not sure we should be very surprised by that, but I think nearly 40% of you have said that it's significantly worsened, and I think that represents how most people are feeling. Significantly improved. It would be interesting to know where that is, but because one of the things the NHS could do well is to learn from where things go better for people and where patients have a better experience, so that can be replicated elsewhere. But I think we can see that actually it's a downward trend, which is worrying. And again, I think that gives us really good information with which to have our ongoing conversations with NHS management, regulators, and government colleagues as well. So thank you for taking part in that. So finally, then, I just want to say again, thank you very much for joining us today and for attending the AGN. If you do need to contact us, you can do that through the helpline for the Patient Association, and they do provide specialist information and guidance to help with whatever your query is, and they're open weekdays between 9:30 and 5. I'm just going to go to colleagues before we close, just in terms of questions and answers. Rachel, I don't know if you're going to come in with.
I am. I'm going to come in with, so I've been answering questions in the chat box as we've been going on where I can do. And I may have missed a couple, but I've said in the chat box that we'll go through there and make sure that we have got them all. And if not, we'll respond when we're sending out the recording of the AGM and a copy of our annual review now that we've come through the AGM. There's a question in the chat box, Julie, which I feel you are well placed to answer. And it's talking around the integrated care boards and all the changes that are happening at the moment, where, you know, there's the mergers of some ICSs together. And what do we think about the impact that this might have on local needs of patients?
Thanks, Rachel. That's a really interesting question. And for those of you who don't know, I've worked in the NHS all of my life. So this isn't the first organisational structural change that I've seen. And every time we go through one, the questions about what impact this will have at a local level generally comes up. I mean, we are in a bit of a state of flux at the moment with the reorganisation of the integrated care boards, and they're generally getting bigger as they cover bigger areas, which is a worry in terms of addressing local needs. And as an organisation, we will just need to keep an eye on it. I mean, I think where we've seen a deterioration in people's experiences of the NHS from the poll that we've just seen, and I think that will be replicated when we extend it further, then clearly we've got a way to go to improve the services. There is still too much of a postcode lottery for people, and it's difficult at this stage to see how bigger ICBs will address that. And so I think it's something that we'll keep a really close eye on. We'll be relying on colleagues to give us feedback, and if we see that there's particular issues that need to be addressed, then obviously we'll pick that up in our discussions and reports and whichever way we can.
Brilliant. And the other thing that members can do is, if they sign up for the conversation with Surgeon Mackey, the sign-up process allows them to ask questions. Now, we have hundreds signed up, so we'll be theming the questions, but if there is a question around ICBs and ICSs, we can absolutely ask that at that webinar at the end of June. There's another question here, Julie, and maybe you'd like me to address it. It's more operational, and it's about understanding how the organisation will be reaching out to diverse communities to become more involved. And I think that's a question that people who talk to me know I'm really passionate about how we do that. And Michael, thank you for that question. And there was a question earlier from Helen about lived experience and how we involve lived experience in our work. And we do nothing without speaking to patients first. And I think with my team, I describe it as continually looking out the window to get to those voices of patients who do not have power or agency in the system. And we did a blog on this a few weeks ago, and are hoping that the long-term health plan will really look at how it'll translate health. Wes Streeting's comment last week that the patients are king or queens, but that the patient is the top person. But one of the things that we do, we just finished a project with patients from, and we actually focused in on an area of high deprivation where health outcomes are actually a lot worse, as we all know. We did a piece of work there to look at health communications and to look at what people saw when they saw vaccination information, all of that kind of information. And what they said was, well, we don't see us. So, we've a lot of work to do to really reach those voices and make sure that they feel that the system wants to hear them. And we're first step in making sure that we hear them. So we've done a lot of work with the department on different pieces of work, from Patterson to a few others, where we've brought those diverse patient voices to the table with the department. It's a continuing job that we have, and it's extremely time consuming to make sure, but it's the right thing that we do to get out there and get to those new voices. Somebody else in the chat offered some support with that, so I've given my email address in to do that. But it is about continually getting to those voices who are not represented in the system right now, that I feel we have a challenge. And Julie, you mentioned our strategy, and obviously there's going to be a lot of opportunities for our members to feedback on where we're going with strategy. And we've already had a patient focus group to define where they felt we should go. And that's the start of, again, engaging different people across all the work that we do. So I hope that answered that question.
Thanks, Rachel.
And then Mark, there was another question in there, and sorry, you've only just become honorary treasurer. But people were asking about our income streams. Do you want me to answer that? Are you happy to?
I'm happy to answer that.
Brilliant.
So we have two main income streams. One is work we do for other bodies, including the NHS. So we get commissioned to do pieces of work, and that earns a significant amount of the Patients Association's money. We also have a corporate organisational sponsorship scheme that is the second largest income stream for us. We are trying to diversify our income away from those through a diversification plan. So we are looking at fundraising from trusts and foundations. We also run I think it's one major event during the year, so that also generates us a small little bit of income. And then we also have some minor investment income that comes in. So we do not receive any statutory funding from public sector organisations just because we are the Patients Association. I think that's my understanding. I'll leave it up to Rachel to caveat that if she may.
Not at all. I think that's completely right. We'll put a link to all our corporate partners in the chat now in a few moments. But I think also we were extremely lucky and really grateful for the legacy that we got. You've just started. So do you want to just maybe touch on the legacy, because that was really
that was, and I even mentioned it in my report. So we received a very generous legacy, which basically increased our income net last year compared to our main sources of income, which had dipped away. So we were fortuitous is the word I would most probably want to use there. We've got to look at how we raise income going forward, where we can have more certainty in terms of that, because obviously to be able to deliver the work that the Patients Association does, you need the resource to do that. And so we'll be looking at that as part of the new strategy as well.
Thank you, Mark. Sorry, Zoom's having a few gremlins today. Julie, that I think is it for the questions. There's one specific from Jill here about general health in areas of concern. Can volunteers from here participate? Yes, Jill, actually, let's you and I maybe catch up on this question about volunteers participating at events to help understand community better, to help raise the concerns. We should talk about that, because I think the role of using volunteers is something I want us to explore. Having those kind of community volunteers is something I'd like us to explore through our next strategy development period. And one last comment, we do have lots of links. You're down as AAs, so I can't see Anthony, sorry. So NHS trained patient peer leaders and patient advisory boards. So we're involved in a lot of patient advisory boards, and Sarah, who's on the call as our head of partnership and involvement, does a lot of work with local patient groups as well, and older people groups, but we can send out more information on that.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. And just leaves it to me then to say thank you so much again for joining us, for your continued support and commitment to the work that we do. And we look forward to another year of being able to represent the patients and improve the services that they get from their NHS. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in 2026.